we're constantly asked and looked at from a critical lens, kya ye kar sakta hai? Is he capable? Is he attractive? Is he ugly? Is he talented or is he trash? Is he hardworking? Is he easy to deal with? You're constantly being analyzed, and when you've been doing this industry long enough, and you're meeting producers, you're meeting other actors and directors, you can see it in their eye. You can see when you're talking to them how their perception of you is being formed. If you want to become more than that, you got to play the game. And playing the game means you're going to find yourself, like you said rightfully, in some treacherous waters with some treacherous people. You're gonna be playing with people who've been playing for many, many years and who have a lot more manpower at their disposal and a lot more wisdom at their disposal. I was dealing with so much anxiety and fear and doubt. Like, I left my girlfriend, I left my life, I left my family, I left my country, I left everything. And I'm sitting in Mumbai and I have no work. And my language skills were not as strong as they are now. And someone called me and said, "You got the job." And I just started bawling. And people want to pin that accusation on Bollywood, but that's the truth in any industry. It's not a meritocracy, right? Let's grow up and look at the world as it is. So being talented is not enough. I don't often get insightful questions, unfortunately. So it's, for me, this was not an interview, it was an exercise in introspection. Like, you guys asking those questions made me have to dig into my past and think about, well, what do I think about these things?
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Flipside podcast. As the name suggests, ours is a podcast that attempts to unfold the lesser known hidden side of an artist's life. Our today's guest is Ankur Rathee. Ankur is an Indian-American actor and dancer, best known for his roles in shows like FOMO Shots Please, Made in Heaven, Inside Edge, Andekhi, and many other shows. And we recently also saw him in the critically acclaimed film Thappad. He's been doing some incredible work, and not just that, he's also very popular on social media with over 6 lakh people following him. In our conversation today, we spoke to him about his initial struggles, his method as an actor, the reality of casting in Bollywood, and the impact that Kriya Yoga has had on his life. Make sure you watch this episode till the end because you'll see a different side to him in this one.
Hey Ankur, it's so lovely to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm lovely. It's lovely to be here.
It's so lovely to have you on, and I think spending some time familiarizing ourselves with your journey, I think is one thing I found absolutely fascinating, which is your journey's taken you to so many different places. You had really humble beginnings in Haryana, California, New Jersey, back to Bombay. I also believe, if I'm not mistaken, you spent some time in Uganda as well in the middle.
Yeah, I did.
And to me, through these experiences, I already see 2 qualities which must have enriched you as an artist and as a professional. I think the first to me is, I know from my own little bit of personal experience that when you're navigating culture shock a lot, it requires a bit of adaptability and resilience. And that is a must for any industry, but especially this one. Also, given that you've interacted with such a, I guess, wide breadth of people, more so than many, I think it must really have enriched you as an artist. But I'm wondering, like, according to you, how do you think these experiences with different cultures have shaped you as a person and as an artist?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I think I'll start with the one that people least expect, which is that the life of an artist, especially if you want to be commercially successful, can be a very lonely one. It's one where it's often you against yourself, kind of like tennis or something. You know, it feels like you're competing with other people, but you're really competing with yourself. And why I bring that up is this journey has lots of ups and downs, and you can rely on family and your friends and your support system to help encourage you, but really it's just you. And what these experiences have done for me, I left my family's home when I was 18, and kind of pushed me to form my own identity, my own friendships, my own circles, constantly getting the opportunity to reinvent myself, and constantly having to be alone with thoughts of skepticism, of doubt, finding my own intuitive voice, my own voice of encouragement, constantly trying to feed thoughts of abundance and not lack.
Yeah.
So that's really important to have as an artist, because it's not an easy journey from an entrepreneurial perspective, right? एक तो होता है जब हम सेट पे जाके हम कलाकार बन के आते हैं, उससे पहले जो हमारी जो जिम्मेदारी है, हमारी जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, वो है कि हम एक बिजनेस हैं और हम सर्विसेज बेच रहे हैं, एक्टिंग की सर्विसेज हम बेच रहे हैं, राइट? दैट्स रियली व्हाट इट इज. एंड सो दैट मीन्स आपकी सोशल मीडिया, आपकी पीआर टीम, आपकी मार्केटिंग डिपार्टमेंट हो जाती है, राइट? आपका जिम इज ब्रांडिंग. दे हैव ऑल योर रिस्पेक्टिव डिपार्टमेंट्स एज वेल. सो इट रियली हेल्प मी इन दैट वे. Culturally, of course, I think that an actor is most, from an artistic perspective, an actor is very well equipped when they've had a lot of world experience, when they've met people from all walks of life, and they've had a breadth of incredible experience. And I've been very fortunate that my parents were financially capable of giving me some of those experiences, but also fortunate that my life led me to very different places at different times. So when I'm working on a character, you never know when and how some random experience from Kampala, Uganda, or some surfer boy that I met, someone I was surfing with in California, or whoever who I met from Haryana, it all just kind of comes in, and it's like you said, over the years I've heard a lot of different accents. I've heard of a lot of different languages growing up. So me as an Indian American kid to come to India and play local Indian men or boys was a challenge at first, but this constantly having to adapt, as you said so aptly, has allowed me to be a bit of a chameleon. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can imagine how difficult it must have been to leave everything and come to Bombay without any connections. Earlier, you mentioned that when you work on a character, I wanted to dig a bit deeper about that. We've seen you play a lot of characters. I wanted to know, how do you prepare for a character that you can't personally relate to? Do you struggle to find the humanity in some of your characters?
So far, I have not. I think that one of the things, much to my fiance's chagrin, much to her disappointment, I think I have a bit of a devil's advocate type of brain. मेरे साथ कोई भी हादसा होता है, कोई मेरे साथ दुश्मनी उठा के बैठ जाता है, इसको if I'm ever verbally abused or if I'm ever put down or anything, there's some part of my brain that always is searching for, well, why did they do that, right? Instead of saying कि ये मेरे साथ क्यों हुआ, उन्होंने क्यों किया, क्या उनका दिन खराब जा रहा है, क्या वो jealousy के कारण insecurity feel कर रहे हैं, what's behind that? And so why I say it's to my fiance's disappointment sometimes is because when your fiance or your friend or your sister or your mother, someone is confiding in you and saying कि उसने मुझे ये किया, they want you to say उसने गलत किया, but my mind immediately goes to, well, they did that because of this. That's the way my brain works. So when I approach my characters, no matter how vile, no matter how evil, I'm able to empathize with their journey, because the truth is, I think that we're all incredible, beautiful souls, children of God. But from the spiritual practice I come from, we're all working off our karma. That's why we're here. We all have our demons, and some of us let those demons control us, and some of us have hamara kabu thoda zyada hai un pe, right? So when I think of, let's say I'm playing someone like Arvind Mehta from City of Dreams, I played this character who was such an asshole, right? He just did not care for human life at all. And it's like, well, I care about people, right? I care about people regardless of where they are on the social hierarchy. But have I been guilty of treating someone less than because they were not at my status? Socioeconomically, of course. Have I valued someone's sorrow less because they're not my family? Of course. Aren't we all desensitized to a certain degree, right? we're not a puddle of tears right now, despite what's going on in Ukraine, right? We're all still doing this interview, aren't we? And that's just what it is, right? Our life. So it's easy to connect with a character like that and say that level of apathy comes from privilege, right? The privilege of being financially well off, or being in our case with this Ukraine conflict, being safe and not having anything to do with it. So you find a way, even with very dark, vile, terrible characters.
No, I think what you said, it reminded me. There was that poet Terence who had that thing he said where I am human, nothing human is alien to me. And I think it's
Yeah.
all somewhere down there, isn't it? The
Wow.
darkness, the evil, the good, the bad. It's all raging inside us somewhere.
Oh, that's so beautiful. What a beautiful quote. I mean, I think about it all the time. I have evil thoughts all the time. Don't we all? Right? Thoughts, we just don't act on them. And a lot of us are having those thoughts subconsciously, and we wouldn't dare voice them, let alone let them come to the conscious part of our brain, right? Like in my profession, jealousy, right? It's a huge pitfall. Or you see someone succeeding, sometimes it's someone close to you. You want to be happy for them. कहीं ना कहीं दिमाग में, कहीं ना कहीं तो वो चल रहा है, right?
But it's
Yeah.
such an amazing skill to have, at least if one can acknowledge this and be aware of what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
Have you ever wondered what has made you so passionate about acting? In my experience with actors, I've realized that some of them treat it as an outlet for their emotions, and especially an outlet where you don't have to face the consequences of expressing a certain emotion.
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
have you experienced anything of that sort?
I feel like I had the opposite effect. I feel like I used to not be able to emote vulnerability in my day-to-day life as comfortably. Obviously, we all go through our sorrows. We all cry in the comfort of our bathroom or our room, right? But I wasn't very open and honest in that way with my emotions. Excuse me. But after I started performing and I started doing scenes that forced me to tap into that vulnerability within myself, right? The way I look at my characters is I'm trying to find myself within those characters. That's the only way that I find that I can make them feel real and real to me. And I can only hope that it feels real to viewers. But for me, in that moment when I'm doing that scene, it needs to feel like something that is natural to me as well. And so when I was forced to do that, I found myself becoming more and more vulnerable in my personal life, right? I was talking about art imitating life versus the other way around. So it's one of those things where I found myself crying more in my altercations with my girlfriend at the time, or my sister, or my mother, or whoever it might be. I found myself, when I'm watching content, suddenly having a very emotional response. I never used to cry so much in films, and now you put on any Tom Hanks film, and I will be a puddle of tears. So I feel like for me, it was a little bit the other way around, where it wasn't that I was searching for acting as a vehicle to emote, but acting by pursuing it definitely made me open up in my personal life. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it is a very interesting take. Actually, I've always heard the other side of it.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's to me, it's really interesting how, like, self exploration is something that I mean, even your professions become an avenue for self exploration, and all the knowledge you gain as an actor, like it's reminding me of another thing where all knowledge is ultimately self knowledge. And so in that way, as you're acquiring the skills and know-how of an actor, and you're tapping into these, like you're building a deeper connection with something in you spiritually. And in fact, spirituality is something we do want to touch upon a little later in our conversation. But if we can, like Karan said, rewind back to this initial part of your career, where, like he said, you came into this industry in many ways as an outsider. uh, those initial days when there's no connections, you've left behind something that's kind of stable in ad tech. I think there's uncertainties about the future, about the present, you're facing rejections. I'm wondering, Is there a story you have that perhaps encapsulates what those initial days were like?
Well, first of all, I commend you both on doing your research. The fact that you even know I worked in advertising technology, I appreciate that. It's rare when I'm speaking to a journalist or I'm speaking to someone who's running a podcast or whatnot who knows in depth. It's all out there. It's just a matter of searching and reading it. So I appreciate that. One story. I landed up in Mumbai and I was staying at this incredible man's home who I did not know. My family had never met. उसकी बेटी जाट है, हम भी जाट हैं और हम यूएस के किसी थिएटर में मतलब जो फिल्म देखने जाते हैं ना हम सारी देसी लोग एक जगह इकट्ठे हो जाते हैं तो मैं था भी नहीं मैं तो न्यूयॉर्क सिटी में था उस टाइम और मेरी माँ बैठी हुई थी और पीछे से किसी की आवाज़ हुई ऐसा लगा जैसे कोई हरियाणवी लहजे में बात कर रहे हैं तो ऐसे ही उनकी दोस्ती होगी उसी टाइम करीबन उसी टाइम I was thinking okay I'm gonna go to the India and I'm gonna pursue acting there and I told my mom I need a place to stay तो मेरी माँ ने ऐसे ही तुक्का लगा दिया पूछ लिया कि भी ऐसा कोई है तुम्हारे वहाँ and she was like you know actually my father has a home in Mumbai he can go and stay there for a few months so I landed up I had never met this person बस वो जाट का कनेक्शन था तो पहले मैं वहाँ गया मैं सोया and I'll never forget the next day I woke up and I was like okay now what there was no plan I like you said I didn't have any real connection I mean my girlfriend at the time now my fiance you know her family you know is in Mumbai and they're in the film industry but I never considered that something that I would try to utilize for work. You know that for me, I would never want anyone to think कि मेरा रिश्ता उसके साथ उसके कारण बना है या निभा रहा हूँ मैं. So I never got involved with that. You know. So it's like okay, now what? So I started off like like a student होता है ना. I was like, चल पहली बात तो मुझे सारे producers के और production house के नाम मुझे मालूम होने चाहिए. मुझे तो इतना भी नहीं मालूम था जैसे I didn't even know कि अभय देओल धर्मेंद्र से कैसे connected है शायद like मैं इतना बेवकूफ था right like I knew basics obviously but I didn't know कैसे रानी मुखर्जी and Kajal maybe might be connected or you know or Yash Chopra I didn't know it so I मैं जो flash card होते हैं ना तो मैं उस पे लिखने लग गया Wikipedia पे गया I looked at film history ऐसे अगर मैं कहीं पे जाता भी हूँ मुझे इतनी तो जानकारी होनी चाहिए ना कि इंडस्ट्री में कौन कौन काम कर रहा है So I started making flashcards on the other side. Okay, Aditya Chopra is the president of Yash. So ऐसे मेरे अभी भी हैं कहीं पे हैं. I have note cards like this thick stack, and I just started learning. And then I started contacting everyone I could possibly think of. जो मैंने 4 साल पहले 6 साल पहले कहा था. Oh, you know, मेरा लड़का बॉम्बे में काम करता है फैशन में. Like something as random as that, I would call and I'd say hi, I'm in Mumbai. So जो भी ऐसा कांटेक्ट मिला उससे मिलने लग गया मैं ताकि मैं सीख सकूं कि मुंबई है क्या ये इंडस्ट्री कैसे चलती है and that went on for a good 6 months or 3 probably 4 5 6 months 5 6 months and that's when I first went to I first got my first ad and I remember I was still living at uncle's home and ऑडिशंस वगैरह में जाने लग गया था पता लग गया कि ऑडिशन कहाँ करने हैं ऑडिशन भी मतलब आराम नगर I don't know you guys aren't familiar maybe but it's a I think it used to be like a refugee camp like it does not have the best infrastructure let's put it that way a big culture shock for me and finally phone call आता है किसी casting director वो कहते हैं कि listen तुम्हें ये टिक टैक की एक ad है और तुम्हें कहाँ था भाई थाईलैंड में शूट तो उसके लिए आना है and I was like okay ठीक है thank you yeah and I cut the phone and I immediately started crying I was like so emotional मुझे मालूम भी नहीं था कि मेरे अंदर इतना वो इतना इमोशन भरा पड़ा है यार you know it was like I was dealing with so much anxiety and fear and doubt Like, I left my girlfriend, I left my life, I left my family, I left my country, I left everything. And I'm sitting in Mumbai and I have no work. And my language skills were not as strong as they are now. And someone called me and said, "You got the job." And I just started bawling because I was like, finally, कोई तो है जो मतलब मुझ पे यकीन करता है, कोई तो है जो मतलब मुझ पर पैसे लगाने के लिए तैयार है, हालांकि वो एक छोटा सा ऐड क्यों ना हो। तो वहां पर वो थोड़ा बहुत तसल्ली मिली, थोड़ा वो अपने आप पर वो विश्वास फिर से जागा कि हाँ ठीक है, शायद कुछ हो सकता है मेरा। And once that happened, I started getting more and more ads, and then you hit again your downs, ups and downs. But those two moments, when I woke up the next day and when I got my first ad, those were two moments that really kind of defined for me in my memory those initial stages of my time in Mumbai.
And that's so endearing, the flashcards, because that really, like, to me, that indicates that sense of sincerity where you're going to sit down, you're going to create flashcards, and it's so endearing. And you also mentioned another bit which I found really interesting. You said how, like, there are these connections in the industry which you aren't necessarily aware of, and you need to inform yourself ki kya hai. And as a person who, because my family, some of them are in the industry, I have kind of a closer perspective, and I know that a lot of work is actually built on relationships and those connections.
Yeah.
And again, I'm wondering, like, I guess a two-parter. The first is, how did you go about cultivating those kind of connections yourself, given that you were sort of an outsider? And then the second is, you said that there's these highs and lows. So how did you not let rejection phase you?
I'll start with the first part, which is creating those relationships. For me, I did what I could to network and meet people in the industry. And to be honest, what that did for me, which I will say was important, was it became an education. हर एक इंसान से जब मैं मिलता था, it wasn't कि आप किसको जानते हो, मेरी मदद करोगे क्या प्लीज, वो मैंने कभी नहीं किया. It was, आप अपनी जर्नी प्लीज मुझे बताओगे कि आपने कैसे किया. I wanted to learn what was, because I studied anthropology in school, right? In university. We call it university in India, right? And for me, like, it's all about the stories. That's where I feel like I learned the most, first person accounts. And so, excuse me. So I would ask people all the time, like, what was your journey? How did you do it? And then I learned quite a bit about the industry through that. But none of those things really led to work, ever. For me, the relationships that still exist today and still matter are relationships that were either very, very genuine friendship or people I've worked with. For my career up until this point, at least, I don't know how it's going to be now moving forward. It's been work begets more work. That's all it's been. एक जगह काम किया, अच्छे रिश्ते बनाए, कई रिश्ते निभाए. You plant all these seeds. I planted so many seeds my first year, and some of them still today, I'll get a call. याद है हम मिले थे तब. Now those things are bearing fruit. So work begets work. Your second question, in terms of ups and downs, dude, it's brutal. It's brutal. I think that the life of an artist, and I can't speak for, I'll speak about acting especially. I feel like we are facing challenges and trials on like a daily or bi-weekly basis at the minimum, right? अगर आप किसी कंपनी में काम कर रहे हो, आप हर रोज जा रहे हो अपने डेस्क पे बैठे हो, मैंने किया है, और आपके 3-4 लोग हैं जिनके साथ आप काम करते हो, आपकी टीम में हैं, और आप एक प्रोजेक्ट का डेडलाइन है जो 2-3 महीने बाद आपको कोई प्रेजेंटेशन देनी है. तो जब वो प्रेजेंटेशन वाला जो हफ्ता है ना, वहां पर तुम्हारी without using bad language, like that's when you really feel that sense of pressure, right? Up until then, it's like every day you're working. That you're just putting in the work. You're going home. You're clocking out. You're enjoying your time with your family, your friends. You're going out to bars and drinking. For me, it's not like that. For actors, it's not like that. Every project we go on to, we're meeting 200 new people.
Yeah.
Every audition we go to, the stakes are very high.
Yeah.
Right? Every time, if for us, every little thing is like, शायद ये, शायद ये,
Exactly.
शायद ये हो जाए, शायद वो हो जाए. अगर ये नहीं हुआ तो, that's where you just, so there's no clocking out. I go socialize, I meet people from the only time I can really clock out is when I go home to San Diego. When I'm in Mumbai, it's never happens. It doesn't matter who I'm meeting. They could work in finance. It doesn't matter. They're still somehow connected. So gosh, I think I got off track. We were talking about ups and downs. Right. I was saying, so for that reason, I think the life of an actor, like our character development, like our personal development, is happening at a faster pace. And I don't mean to say that with any arrogance. I know everyone, is, grows at their own pace and should, but at least my personal experience has been is I have not had to introspect, lift myself up, encourage myself, face challenges, face rejection as frequently as I think the normal person does. Just because we're constantly told, are you worthy? Right? We're constantly asked and looked at from a critical lens, kya ye kar sakta hai? Is he capable? Is he attractive? Is he ugly? Is he talented? Or is he trash? Is he hardworking? Is he easy to deal with? You're constantly being analyzed, and when you've been doing this industry long enough, and you're meeting producers, you're meeting other actors and directors, you can see it in their eye. You can see when you're talking to them how their perception of you is being formed. And so it's a really weird world. So when you say ups and downs, the downs are frequent and they're tough, because जब हम ऑडिशन पे जाते हैं या हम मीटिंग्स में जा रहे हैं, हम अपने आप को पेश कर रहे हैं ना, हम ही सर्विस हैं, हम ही प्रोडक्ट हैं जो हम बेच रहे हैं. तो जब कोई कहता है कि हमें ये प्रोडक्ट नहीं चाहिए, हम पर्सनली लेते हैं. It's hard not to. You train yourself not to, but it's hard not to take that personally. Because when someone says we don't want you for the role, what they're really saying is we don't want you. You're not good enough. Until you don't change that narrative in your head and say, no. That's not me. My career, my craft does not define me. That is a separate thing. That's just a client who doesn't want what I'm selling. That's fine. There'll be many more clients. So it's tough. It's tough. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but there's just the lows are really tough, and that's when you have people like my fiance have been really, really pivotal in helping me kind of maintain perspective and stay persistent.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's very difficult to do, and it's so important to dissociate yourself from your work. Otherwise, if you keep attributing your value to what you've done, if something that you've done has failed, it's just that who has failed and not you. So if you do that, I think it's just good for your mental health. So Ankur, I believe you've had an entrepreneurial background and you've spoken about how you're still open to the idea of it, and probably in the future you'd like to get into direction, production. Do you feel, like you said earlier on, there are a lot of ups and downs, and when there are downs, they're really bad? For an artist, do you feel it's important to have a side hustle for financial security?
That's a really tough question. It's to each his own. I've known both cases. I recently basically what you're asking is, should I have a plan B? Right? That's the essence of it, right? If plan A doesn't work out. And then the second part of that question is, I still have to feed myself. I still have to pay rent. So am I financially capable? So it really depends person to person, If you come from a family where they can't support you in those initial years, you better have a job. You better figure it out. There's no point in coming to Mumbai and not knowing how you're going to pay next month's rent. How are you ever going to focus on your craft and focus on, focus on thinking and feeling and vibrating like a star, right? If you're like, where am I going to get money? I can't, And there's people who still defy that, and they still make it. And that's fantastic. Where there's a will, there's a way. But my advice is, if you don't have the financial backing, whether from your own savings or whether from an already ongoing side hustle or family support, then yeah, come in with a plan. And, I'm from, the New York, Los Angeles thing is you get a job as a waiter on the side, which You talk about cultural differences. I was talking to a friend here. He's an artist, and he was like, "Dude, like I'm trying, but I want to start earning money on the side. Like, I wonder what can I do?" I said, "Well, why don't you work at CCD? Like, work at a coffee shop?" And he looked at me like, "Just pata nahi maine kya keh diya," because I didn't realize yet that there's a social hierarchy. That when you come from a certain background, you don't just work at CCD. I didn't even know that, because where I come from in America, there's like a sense of is an egalitarian. It's like I worked at I've worked in a dry cleaners. I've worked everywhere. I've worked in a bagel shop. Like, it doesn't matter. So definitely, whatever suits your cultural comfort and your skill sets, have some financial support. The second part of that question is, should I have a plan B? And that's a much more difficult question. I believe personally, in my experience, that if you have a solid plan B, like a solid plan B that you're actively feeding and you're investing your time and energy in just to keep it safe going, it's not going to make plan A life or death. And plan A needs to feel like life or death sometimes, especially when the odds are against you. I believe that for me, plan B is my education. Plan B for me is my skill sets. Plan B for me is my work ethic. Plan B for me are the skill sets that I'm accumulating as I go on this journey of it as an actor and an entrepreneur. The way I look at it is, I think that there are many companies out there that would be happy to have me work for them if this profession doesn't work out. I mean, like, as an actor, look at all the things you learn. It's not an easy gig. It's just about how you pitch it when the time comes. So that's how I feel. If you have that entrepreneurial spirit, plan B is you.
Yeah. And I really resonate with that, because if you haven't burnt all your bridges, there is that little bit of something holding you back from just throwing yourself completely into it. When there's that hesitation, it in an industry like this, and especially when you're an artist, it makes a world of difference. It's like sports. That just that millisecond of a difference for sprinters, it makes a difference. I think, yeah.
Reminds me of. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry.
No, I was just saying that it reminds me of a question that I got a lot from journalists when I first came here. Was tu US छोड़ के India क्यों आया? It's a valid question. I mean, it has many, many different parts to it. But one of the major ones was that somewhere intuitively I knew that to make this work, make acting as a profession stick for me, I needed the earth beneath me to be like, I needed to be pulled out from underneath me. I needed to be completely disoriented. I needed to completely be displaced, because growth only happens in discomfort. Unfortunately, that's how we are, aren't we? Humans are wired that way. Why change something if it's working? It's not until we feel friction in our relationships do we sit and say, oh, what should I have done differently? And so I was in New York City, as you know, working in advertising technology, making good money, and not checking my bank account because I was like, I don't have to. Like, taking my girlfriend out, who was living just a few blocks away from me, to dinners. We're going clubbing, we're partying. Life was good. I was eating delicious food. And along with that, I started doing off-Broadway theater. I was doing my stuff. I was doing the acting stuff on the side, but I was too comfortable. It just reminded me of what you had said about that sense of, you said burning bridges, but the idea of just basically completely putting that other life away to start afresh, to start anew. And that's why India, when I came, that was one of the reasons. Obviously, I love Hindi cinema. I grew up on it. There's so many other reasons, but I knew intuitively I needed to get out of my comfort zone. And India really did that for me.
Oh, it's like an ice shower. It It jolts you
अरे
awake into a new state of being.
मुझे तो आज के दिन भी याद है मैं यार वोडाफोन का सिम चाहिए था मुझे
हाँ
I
अरे
just
बाप
needed
रे
I just needed I just needed to be able to call. I was like, why is this? I was like, I'm giving you money. Just give me. I just want to. I'm paying you. नहीं सर ये लगेगा आपका वो लगेगा आपका ये
राशन
नहीं है
कार्ड
आपके
ये
पास
वो
तो आप ये एफिडेविट बनवा के लाओ लेकिन
Yeah.
एफिडेविट किससे नहीं आपको इस घर से आप यहाँ रहते हो ना उस घर से जो है जिनके अंकल के साथ आप रह रहे हो
हाँ
उनका एड्रेस प्रूफ चाहिए वो कंपनी का ऑफिस है घर है उनका नहीं है और तो कंपनी से उनका लेटर चाहिए उनके लेटर हेड पे
बाप
चाहिए
रे
लो जी लेके आ जाए नहीं इस पे सिग्नेचर चाहिए स्टैम्प चाहिए लेके आ गया अब आपको पुलिस सर्टिफिकेशन के लिए I was like, dude, I just need a fucking phone, man. I just need a call. That's all I need.
Yeah, such a
I was
nice
so pissed off.
Yeah.
I was like, that's how I started. So I wanted to get out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Oh, I was out of my comfort zone
Yeah.
right when I landed.
Absolutely. And you're so right that if you really want to accelerate your growth as a human being, you have to throw yourself in the deep end. And when you do throw yourself in the deep end when it comes to creative pursuits, I think being able to do it as a profession, and I'm sure both of you would agree, but it's a joy, it's an honor, it's a privilege to be able to create and collaborate and touch people's lives with what you do. And but there is that, but then also like we're kind of touching upon, that isn't always the full picture, and we wouldn't be I guess mentioning the whole story if we didn't touch upon like the darker side of the profession in some sense as well, because even after you're here and you're trying to make things work, there's things like being typecast, being treated disrespectfully. There's so much I've heard actors, colleagues, friends telling me about having to get roles in exploitative manners where you're either exchanging money, sometimes sexual favors. And I'm just wondering, with sort of a balanced view, if we were to speak to aspirants who want to make it here, what are, according to you, some of the treacherous waters they need to be careful navigating?
Know your value system. Know. Look, it's a game. It's not a meritocracy. That's just what it is, right? And people want to pin that accusation on Bollywood, but that's the truth in any industry. It's not a meritocracy, right? Let's grow up and look at the world as it is. So being talented is not enough. That's an unfortunate truth. So if it's a game, you're gonna at some point or another have to play it if you want that level of success. If you just want to make a living as an artist, if you want to just hit kind of that mid-tier level in your career, which is fine, that's incredible, right? Like you said earlier, there's so much good, right? The idea of meri kala meri seva hai, right? If that's your approach is, I don't care about being famous. I don't care. I just want to be on stage, and मैं इन कैरेक्टर को मैं निभाना चाहता हूँ, मैं पेश करना चाहता हूँ, मैं लोगों को रुलाना चाहता हूँ, हंसाना चाहता हूँ. I love the process, and that's it. Cool. You don't need to play the game, But if you want to build, if you want to become more than that, you got to play the game. And playing the game means you're going to find yourself, like you said rightfully, in some treacherous waters with some treacherous people. You're gonna be playing with people who've been playing for many, many years and who have a lot more manpower at their disposal and a lot more wisdom at their disposal. So, first and foremost, know your value system. What are you willing to compromise on and what are you not? And it's different for different people, and I don't judge. I know, as you mentioned some stories, I know people who've been through various different things, and I am in no position to judge anyone, right? Like, it is what it is. I know what my values are, and I've been in situations where a producer has, made an advance on me, and I was like, listen, I'm so sorry. And again, na bhi kehna hai to kaise kehna hai? I didn't say no. Right? You can't offend their ego necessarily, or sometimes you can take the Kangana route or whatever route. You know what I mean? You can, whatever suits you, however you want to play the game. You can play it aggressively, you can play it diplomatically. So, as you rightfully said, there are some treacherous waters. I mean, the only advice I can give to aspirants, to people who are jumping in this field, is know your value system and make sure that your value is, you never allow other people to determine it. And that's so crucial. I think we talked about earlier that you're constantly up for rejection and it's easy to take that personally. So you constantly have to remind yourself that these people, these producers, these directors, these casting directors, the audience members who are watching my content, they don't get to assign value to me. They can critique my craft, but my value is derived from within, or it's derived from what my mother and father believe about me. The number of times I've told my sister Sonia, because I had to tell it to myself. Excuse me. The number of times I've had to tell my sister and have to remind myself that, hey, when things get really, really icky, when you're, maybe you're working with a producer or something's not going as it should be. Kuch to matlab gandagi hai, or someone is trying to cheat you or this or that. I always say, hey, remember, tu Joginder और उषा राठी की बेटी है. तू कहाँ पली बड़ी है? तेरे भाई का क्या नाम है? राइट? तू बचपन में क्या करती थी? तुझे खुशी किस चीज में मिलती है? To try to unwire your identity with that of an actor and remember, whoa, oh my God, I'm a human being first. I have so many more identities than just actor, because in this profession it becomes all consuming, and your projects and these people, these producers and this and that, they're all consuming, and you think, you got to just step back. You got to remind yourself that my value is not just that of an actor. So those are two pieces of advice I'd give you. Know where you derive your value from. Don't put it in other people's hands, and know your value system. Know what you can and can't compromise on.
Yeah, no, this is such good advice. And another dimension to this, I was listening to an interview of this actor called Vikrant Massey, and he said that great actors are losing out on projects because they don't have a big enough fan following on social media. I wanted to know from you, is this actually happening, and how important is a social media fan following for actors now?
It is happening. Let's look at it from a business perspective, right? Like a film is a business venture. That's just what it is, right? So you only make a profit on your film when people are going to come and go and see it. So if you have an artist who has 20 million followers, that's an indication of their level of popularity and how many seats that they can fill. That doesn't just happen in India, that happens in the US too, right? But there's a tipping point, obviously, right? I mean, so if I'm up for something and someone else is up for something and they have 200, 300,000 followers more than me or something, it's not make or break, right? At a certain point, there's a creative call too, right? I don't want to take someone who has more following but is a way worse actor in my film and overall is going to suffer. So it's a business decision. So it does matter. What I would say that if you're an artist, and the way I try to think about it myself, is more than how much following I have, which of course, like we just said, matters a little bit. The blue check can matter sometimes, right? Just not in terms of getting the role, but in terms of someone seeing your message, in terms of social networking, right? Right? It could be just trying to doing a test shoot with a photographer. Right? A photographer, you're going to message someone, guess what? In their DM, that blue check mark is like, oh, who's this? Right? And then you click on it, oh, he's got so many followers. Oh, okay, because unfortunately in this day and age, we associate value with following, right? Something we have to also unwire. But I will say social media is an opportunity to showcase, I won't say your talent, but your persona, your public persona. And in an industry where films are mounted on people and not characters always, I hope you understand what that means, right? Films are mounted on stars, Not always the film itself, not always the story or that character. Public persona matters. Hence why we have PR, right? That's what it is. And that's also true in the States. So from that perspective, what you put out there on social media, remember there are directors and producers. Once you're shortlisted or before you're being cast and someone is thinking about casting you, they're going to that page and they're scrolling and they're saying, what does this person look like in different looks? What is this person's personality? How does this person speak? Right? That's if you don't have work already released. If you have work released, that already gives them certain insight as to what kind of actor you are. And I don't necessarily agree with how things are done, but like I said, that's the game, and so you have to play it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are also playing the game with a lot of fake followers. So if someone goes on that, I think it's very risky, you know.
It's true.
Yeah. On a personal note, Ankur, you've spoken about your girlfriend and your fiance, and both of you are actors. What we were wondering is, are relationships slightly harder for actors because there are some unique challenges that they face, be it irregular timings, be it you're traveling for a long time, or you're in a certain character and you need some personal space. So does it become tougher for actors to be in a long-term committed relationship?
Yeah. Yeah, like it's a challenge, you know, but I think about it, would it be more of a challenge if she wasn't an actress and she didn't understand my industry at all? Right? I see that all the time with my friends who have to romance these women off on screen, or who are on outdoor shoot for 1 month and their room is right next to their, you know what I mean? The level of insecurity and fear and jealousy, like, you know, or those long, crazy hours. It's like, what do you mean you're gone? So in some ways, it's hard in both senses. But with Anuja, it's been a blessing, because like we talked about those ups and downs, she understands them. She's gone through them herself. She's gone through those emotions of insecurity, jealousy, of arrogance, we understand. We've all hit those stages at different times in our career, and we learn from each other. You know, more than her network being mine and mine hers, we're constantly learning from each other's journey. And I cannot tell you how many mistakes I've avoided because of that, and hopefully vice versa. You know, so it's been a blessing in disguise. Time difference, of course, it's a pain. We've been dating 8 years. It's a huge challenge, but then you get better and better at it. You start to realize how your relationship is meant to serve you when you're apart versus when you're together. Very different type of companionship. When you're together, I mean, let's take something as simple as, the physical aspect, right? Where you can rely on physical affection as the primary mode of showing your love when you're physically in person. Well, when you're far apart, what form does that love take? And then you're forced to explore creative ways of expressing that and making your partner feel like you're still there for them. It becomes a marriage or a companionship that is a more intellectual or more emotional in terms of support. But one of the other challenges, of course, is we talked about insecurity and jealousy. When I'm up, she might be down. When she's up, I might be down. And I'll talk about personally for me. I remember being in New York. I was working in advertising technology, and I just gotten out of school, and the goal was, my university, and my goal was, university से निकलने के बाद ये job करूँगा. Job करते करते फिर मैं अपना ये acting का भी side में शुरू करूँगा. अब पहले जो 6 महीने ऐसे ही बीत गए काम समझने में, करने में, और न्यूयॉर्क सिटी की I wasn't single, but न्यूयॉर्क सिटी की life जीने में. And I hadn't made that serious effort, yet. And in that time, Anuja booked something amazing. She was working on something amazing. And oh my gosh, I felt so jealous. I'm it's a very different type of jealous. एक होता है jealousy जो तुम चाहते हो कि काश उसका जो है वो मुझे मिल जाए. और दूसरी jealousy होता है काश जो उसके पास है वो भी मुझे मिल जाए, right? You don't want to take it away from them. So it was never that. I always want Anuja to succeed and she wants me to succeed. But it's very tough sometimes when you're living and breathing and eating with someone who is living your dream and you're not. And so I was so jealous and I was so immature about it. But what it did is it lit a fire under my ass. You know, it made me really go, whoa, well, what are your priorities? How dare you look at that and feel small when you haven't made any serious effort to go down? So it really inspired me. And I remember that's when I literally a few days later I went to my first off-Broadway audition, and 2 weeks later I got my first part in New York City. So that's what, you know, it's really you feel these emotions, these negative emotions. It's really just how are you gonna make them serve you versus you serve them? How are you gonna feed them, or are they gonna inspire some kind of growth in you? And you know, sometimes I succeed and sometimes they succeed.
Yeah, no, that challenge is ongoing, but it's so beautiful to hear that how you both supported each other and how you've learned vicariously through her experiences, but then you've also used like her experiences to fuel your own growth as a person.
Yeah.
Because the feeling you described wasn't a why her, it was a why not me as well, which is a really different feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also so amazing that you guys have each other and also your sister, because you know, when you're famous, then you have like people praising you all the time. But I'm sure you guys can give each other a reality check all the time and stay grounded that way.
I get a reality check all the time.
But it's so important to get that.
Yeah, it is. And it's not just my sister. It's also Anuja's sister. Anisha is also an actress here and in the US now, and it's a huge. जब मैं यहाँ आया पहले तो अनीशा भी काम कर रही थी, लेकिन हमारी मतलब इतनी गहरी दोस्ती नहीं थी. So it felt like I was alone. And now when there's 4 of us, it feels like chalo, like we're all on the same team, you know. So when you change the concept of we're competitors to we're on the same team, then it's like chalo कोई बात नहीं, मुझे काम नहीं मिल रहा है, उसको तो मिल रहा है. हमारे मतलब मैंने स्कोर नहीं किया, उसने स्कोर किया है ना गोल, मतलब हम टीम के ही तो पॉइंट्स बढ़ रहे हैं. And dude, it's true. When Anuja is working somewhere on a set and she's excelling and succeeding, I go to that set, she's introducing me to all those people, right? I mean, then my network expands. And it's not something that we do in a manipulative fashion. That's just how friendship works, right? It happens with some of my friends too. If I am very forthright and very giving and supportive of my friends, when they succeed, they're going to be supportive of me. मैं अपनी मदद दूंगा, वो अपनी देंगे जब वो जरूरत पड़े. और नहीं भी देते तो क्या बड़ी बात है, right? It's just like people get really like upset about that. Hey, I helped you, you didn't help me. It's like, dude, if they didn't, you didn't help me, all right, fine, someone else will.
Yeah. And you can't always give with like expecting something in return in mind. Sometimes,
never give with expectation. One of my gurus, Swami Shri Yukteswar, I will paraphrase, but he basically says, I don't expect anything of anyone, so I can never be disappointed. And obviously expectation in the realm of loyalty and marriage, and those are different expectations. But normal people, if you're gonna help someone, just help them, and then forget about it. Don't keep a ledger in your mind. कल को वही बंदा तुम्हारी मदद नहीं करेगा और तुम्हें नहीं पसंद, all right, then distance yourself from that friendship. Fine, but there's no reason to be like, you didn't help me. It's like, stand on your own 2 feet. It's okay. Someone will help you up if they can, but otherwise you should be strong enough to stand on your own.
Yeah. Exactly. And that entitlement is dangerous. And I mean, we were joking about reality checks now, and I think the best reality check when it comes to putting things in perspective is meditation. And I think something the 3 of us share is we've all drawn upon meditation, and I think upon our spiritual practices to nourish our professional selves. I recall in one of your TED talks, you had this really beautiful point about how like there's external obstacles for actors, but the self itself can be the biggest obstacle. And to me, that was like a really, damn, I never thought of it that way. So given the fact that you've clearly reflected on this and thought on this deeply, I'm wondering, are there any, I guess, surprising or unintuitive ways that spirituality, meditation, your practice of Kriya Yoga from I think when you were 12, how do you think it's impacted you as an actor and as a performer?
Well, I mean, it's impacted everything, right? I mean, it impacted me severely as a person. Everything we've talked about, so many of them are lessons I've learned through my spiritual practice. Just like humne kaha, the idea of a devil's advocate, the idea of empathizing with others and understanding even villainous behavior, right? The idea of how do you deal with jealousy, the idea of how do you deal with insecurity, all of that, those are all spiritual teachings that, I would give credit to my Guru Paramahansa Yogananda and my meditation practice and my remarkable upbringing from my mother and father. One thing I'll talk about a little bit more that maybe I haven't spoken as much about is that I used to fear when I first came to Mumbai that यार अगर मैं इतना ध्यान में जाऊंगा, ध्यान में बैठूंगा, इतना मेडिटेशन में घुस गया तो मैं तो हमेशा शांत रहूंगा और फिर मैं ये इमोशनली वॉलेटाइल कैरेक्टर्स कैसे प्ले करूंगा. Right? I used to think to myself, if I'm calm all the time, how am I going to play angry? How am I going to play terrible fear? Or how am I going to tap into crazy amounts of sorrow? I used to really be concerned about that early, first year and a half, 2 years. I was like, I'm not a sad person. I was like, I'm not sad. How am I going to ever play a sad character? And I would do those scenes and I would get in my head. I was like, I'm not able to get to that emotional place, And obviously that fear was, I realized later that it was unfounded. And I realized that meditation was having the opposite effect. That what my meditation practice was helping me do was, it was helping me connect to my identity as a child of God, and therefore connect with other people as children of God. It helped me connect with the idea when my true self that, what best way to say it is, I could see myself in other people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like when we talk about for me, the baseline, the foundation of acting starts with empathy. It starts with trying to love your character, trying to understand where your character needs love, or where your character has love, or where your character can give love. And that just takes so many different forms. And for me, meditation allowed me to be calm enough and to be centered enough that in my day-to-day life, I was connecting with people more and more. And I think the more and more you connect with people as an actor, the more and more you understand them. And the more and more you can feel for them, I thought that meditation would make me apathetic, but it didn't make me apathetic. It made me more compassionate, and compassion is necessary, It made me more loving. It made me more selfless, and I have a long way to go still. But the little bit that I do have, I owe to that. And so when I'm going through life and practicing those things, and then I go on set and I've got this character. Now I'm looking at those scenes from a very human perspective and not just my narrow Ankur's ego perspective, my experience, my perspective, it's no longer just nine Safi for one person. It's now like, well, what's insaf for him? What's insaf for him? What's driving everyone here? And isn't the goal for all of them just happiness and love in some form or manner? So I'm sorry I got too philosophical. But
not at all. I think that's so beautiful, and like you're saying, it's the more people we interact with, we create representations of them in our head. And there's one where you're understanding somebody intellectually, and if I can put it this way, that's like a low resolution version of them. But when you're connecting with them on the level of compassion, emotionally and spiritually, it's like you have such a richer and more detailed representation of people in your head to then tap into as an actor.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That I think that's really fascinating, and I can see clearly the kind of impact it's had on you. And I think we really appreciate uh, the candidness with which you've answered this question, all our questions, the depth to which you've taken these questions, and you've really added so much value to all these questions we had. Thank you so much for your time today. I think it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time, and I'm sure our viewers will love to go on this journey with us and to hear, all these different sides of you, which we don't necessarily get to see in the content.
Thank you for your questions. Like I said, I don't often get insightful questions, unfortunately. So it's, for me, this was not an interview, it was an exercise in introspection. Like, you guys asking those questions made me have to dig into my past and think about, well, what do I think about these things? So the gratitude is mutual.
Thank you so much, Ankur. We really appreciate you saying that.
And to our viewers, we hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you did, please hit the like button. If you like such podcasts and would like to see more, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be informed of when we upload another episode. Do let us know in the comment section below which insight today resonated with you the most, and we'll see you again in another episode really shortly. Bye.